That's the thing that has been inspiring, is that when the government fails us, we will protect each other. We live in this interconnected world, and everything has probably come from somewhere else, somehow, in our movements. And we are currently building and iterating on cultures as we speak and making it our own. These are ideas that are coming up now that will be put in place and become systems.
Welcome to The Future is Beautiful. Thank you for being here. If you find that this podcast brings something into your life, perhaps ideas you didn't know, wisdom that touches you, that it connects you to wonderful humans and possibility, then please come and step deeper into the community by joining Presence Collective. And this will evolve into our new membership, which we will launch through our app in the autumn. You can find out more about this if you go to our website and click on community and support. We're also accepting larger one-off donations to support with the making of our community app, if this is something that you believe in and want to make happen. And if you don't yet have a copy of my new book, Intuition, please head to www.amisha.co.uk/intuition and order yours. It's a wonderful opportunity to support authors of colour, as well as develop the beautiful intuitive intelligence you hold inside of you. For anyone listening who is South Asian and identifies as a woman, you can find me speaking this week at the South Asian Sisterhood Summit, where I share some things I don't normally share, such as how I've dealt with the racism and bullying that I've experienced, as well as how I've bridged different cultures and found my way with breaking conventions and living my own path. You can go to my website, www.amisha.co.uk, and click on events to find out more about how you can join this fabulous and well-needed summit. This week is a theme very close to my heart as the COVID crisis in India worsens. One interesting analysis of why this is happening that I've heard from doctors and medical specialists is that it could in part be due to the vaccines. This includes a doctor who is not anti-vax. Not all vaccines are created equal. Covaxin is one of the two approved vaccines in India, as well as the AstraZeneca one, which is called Covishield in India. It has been freely reported that the vaccine called Covaxin doesn't meet manufacturing standards. When you delve deeper into this, it is that the virus was not deactivated properly in the vaccine. When you deactivate the live virus, it makes it safe to vaccinate the population during a pandemic where viral shedding will not happen and people will therefore not get sick when vaccinated. We have linked to an article on this in the show notes, and you can Google this freely. It's not the whole story, but could be a component of what is happening, as well as the other factors you are about to hear about. I have also been connecting this week with Charlotte Pulver, who you know from episode 124. She has been researching, along with other specialists, an immunity protocol for COVID in India, with herbs and supplements that are easily sourced from India. This is a continuation of the beautiful work that Charlotte did with these specialists for the frontline immunity support in the UK. If you want to know more about that, then please go and listen to episode 124, as it's still so relevant, as Charlotte explains what we all can be doing for our health to stay healthy and support our communities and our medical systems throughout this pandemic. And in that podcast, we do break down some of the different supplements and herbs and oils that can really support us during this time. The protocol for India includes simple things such as vitamin C, vitamin D, Ayurvedic herbs like ashwagandha and andrographis, and essential oils like lemongrass, citronella, and neem. A lot of this is easily found and manufactured and grown in India. There is a protocol for prevention and immunity support, as well as a protocol for those with the active virus. There is a protocol for those to work with privately in their homes, as well as how to get useful and inexpensive supplements out to the masses for those doing outreach work. Some of this has been tried and effective in other global South countries earlier in the pandemic, and some of it is specific to India, understanding what is available there and the health systems and other factors that might affect Indians in particular. The protocol gives dosages as well as links to research that backs this, and even links for where you can buy everything. Charlotte has made this super easy because we really need to get this information out there. If you are in India, have friends or relatives in India, work for an NGO or are connected to one, please go to the page of this podcast on our website, or I've also created a page about this on amisha.co.uk in the blog area, and you can download the protocol and share it so we can support more people during this time with their health. Health and immunity is so key in a pandemic for everyone in every country, regardless of access to financial wealth. We really want these basic and potentially life-saving ways of supporting people to get out there so that lives can be saved and there isn't a reliance on hospitals and oxygen. The situation is real. I learned this week through a friend living in India of a village in Maharashtra where there are currently 15 deaths a day. We have linked to a fundraiser to get oxygen to this village through the Shivoham Tantra Ashram in our notes, as well as many other ways that you can contribute and lend your support, your time, your energy, your love, and your money to India to help with what is happening right now. There are many important links with the show notes on this episode as we direct you to all kinds of ways that you can rise up and show up. My guest this week is Shruti Ganguly, and she is an award-winning filmmaker and writer based in Oslo and New York City. Shruti was a member of Obama's ECCO committee of 30 leaders and creators in entertainment, chairing its Asian Caucus, and is on the creative council for Emily's List. She has produced several films, including Spirit winner H and the Nora Ephron Prize winner Initials SG, that have premiered Sundance, Venice, Tribeca, and Berlin. Shruti has directed videos for Google, Unilever, Nike, Condé Nast, Chanel, and crafted #MySentence series on prison reform for the Obama administration. In late 2017, Shruti started Honto 88, a production company that works in a variety of formats, from narrative and doc features to series and branded content. She launched it with a narrative feature, Green Dolphin, by director Chris Kinali and EP Keanu Reeves. Shruti worked for several years with James Franco on films and produced an experimental art performance with him and Marina Abramovic called Bird Shit, which premiered at the Museum of Modern Art. Previously, Shruti worked at Nylon, MTV, and Condé Nast, producing the Clio-winning 73 Questions series. Shruti is currently writing a genre film for Sony and writing a multi-generational drama for Netflix. She's developing a series on the Harlem Renaissance with Killer Films and MGM. Shruti is a co-founder of the Resistance Revival Chorus, a collective born out of the Women's March that brings together artists and activists to use music and joy as an act of resistance. Shruti is a published writer of Nevertheless They Persisted through Penguin and a contributing writer for The Juggernaut. Shruti received her bachelor's degree from Northwestern University and went to NYU's dual MFA MBA program at Tisch and Stern. She hails from India by way of Oman and believes that international stories deserve the specificity and truth and strategic marketing and distribution plan to travel the world and change the way we exist. Shruti was also one of our incredible speakers at the Style and Presence Women's Summit, a reclamation of worth, that we hosted in November over Diwali last year, along with Dion Holder, who was our guest last week. And if you missed the summit, you can still go and get access to all of those incredible conversations where Shruti shares about the power of community. And we share a little bit of the story of how we connected and how our lives have woven together. If you're interested in that, you can go to www.styleandpresence.com. In today's episode, we explore the themes of pandemic genocide, cultural wealth, and resistance revival in this conversation called Silver Linings on a Crisis. I hope that you enjoy this episode and that it awakens more joy as resistance in you, as well as mobilizes support for our beloved India. Welcome to The Future is Beautiful, with me, your host, Amisha Gadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between politics, spirituality, creativity, and sustainability. It's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a brighter future. This is the revolution. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures that we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to dream, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing, we create the future that we wish to wake up for. That future is beautiful. Shruti, it is an absolute delight to welcome you to The Future is Beautiful. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
My first question is one that I've started asking everyone recently, which is, what does a beautiful future mean to you?
Sorry, there's a siren that's about to go by. I think a beautiful future doesn't have so many sirens. I think that is a really interesting question at this time, especially as an Indian, where India, the place of my birth, the place of my citizenship, is being ravaged by COVID. And so the idea of a beautiful future is a place where there's incredible understanding and awareness of amongst people. There's respect. People are treated with dignity. People have the courage to stand up for themselves, and that governments really function to protect people. I don't think we can have a future without that political leadership per se, but we want to have systems that are actually designed to protect people, to save lives. And as we can see from the situation unfolding in India right now, that is not the case. So I hope for a future in which people feel safe.
Yeah. I think for all of us that have deep connection to India and are hearing from friends and family, it's been an incredibly difficult time. One of the things that my cousin said this week was, I hope we all get to see each other again on the other side. And it really hit me, that there's a really strong reality that that's not the case, that India will be a very different place after this. And that these are extreme levels of loss. And I saw that one of the posts that you made, you've been really sharing a lot in these days and weeks, which has been so helpful for so many, because you're bringing context, especially for those in the West, a lot of our friends that will be listening to this conversation that don't really understand the scale of it. And the analogy that more people are dying of COVID in India every day than died in the whole of the 9/11 incident. I mean, that really just makes you just go, whew. And then we compare like how much attention and support and outrage there was for 9/11. And then this is happening in India.
Yeah. And also when we were saying, 3,000 people died specifically with, the falling of the Twin Towers on 9/11. Thousands and countless lives have been affected in Afghanistan, for example, as a reaction to that, or other parts of the region, in Asia and the Middle East. And so those numbers are even greater when you're really looking at the impact of 9/11. But when you're focusing on the Twin Towers, 3,000 people dying. In India, what is reported is that 3,500 people are dying a day. It's predicted that by mid-May, the highest daily death rate that is reported will be about 5,600 people in a day. But again, the aspect is to remember is what is reported. It is very hard in one of the most populated countries in the world to measure and have a sense of these numbers. But the thing that is giving me hope in these dark times, and it's taken me, I think, 10 days to feel this, because it's just been 10 days of just feeling like we are witnessing a massacre and carnage and like a genocide, and we don't even know how to handle it, is the kind of upheaval and the movement of citizens. And that's the thing that has been inspiring, is that when the government fails us, we will protect each other. I'm in these various task groups, COVID, India versus COVID, WhatsApp groups, and so on. And what's amazing is seeing, how people are working to get oxygen and steroids and plasma and like checking on ventilators and beds. And it's this these community-centered effort that are protecting people, that are saving lives. I mean, of course, like the other stats that are really shocking and upsetting, and this is only in Delhi, hospitals are operating at like 250% capacity. And doctors are operating at 45% capacity, and they're incredibly overwhelmed. And the reason there's a shortage of, healthcare professionals is because of their own exposure to COVID or even getting the disease themselves. So, what's exciting today, again, these are the things that give me hope, is that a group of friends have started an organization called Doctors in Diaspora, where they are connecting international South Asian doctors primarily with patients and caregivers on the ground in India, so that people feel like they can ask these questions around the clock. They don't have to suddenly go to the hospital to get answers, because going to the hospital right now is not a solution. You may even be safer being at home and having an oxygen tank delivered home. I'm inspired by movements like this. And this is not even necessarily in the space of work that a lot of my friends are in. This is how we come together. We're seeing where the gaps are, where the needs are, and we are acting.
Yeah, that's definitely the beautiful kind of aspect of what is happening. I've been following a lot the journalist Rana Ayub, who's been sharing a lot of like videos of what's really happening and really courageous sharings. And, people are like putting on Twitter, like, my grandma needs a bed in a hospital, and like people are showing up, and you have all kinds of people like out there volunteering, like figuring out how to do it. And it's like, if the government's not going to help us, like we're going to help each other. And that is really strong right now.
Yeah. The other people who are obviously putting their lives on the line right now are journalists, are the people who are trying to find the answers and communicate what is happening to the world. Because the thing is that the Indian government, has been able to get big companies like Facebook and Twitter to take down tweets and posts if they feel like they don't comply with the Indian government. And so when freedom of speech is going to be affected at that level, journalists are risking their lives to be on the ground to tell these stories themselves to trusted resources like the Washington Post or Time or the Guardian or the New York Times and so on. So Rana and many others are really doing an incredible work of amplifying what is truly happening on the ground.
Yeah. Many of our friends that are listening, I feel, will have like a connection with India and Indian culture, but it will likely be within the realms of, I went to India and it changed my life. I had this big spiritual experience. Yoga, turmeric, Ayurveda, these kinds of things. And I guess what I would love for you to do is to call them in to what is really happening in India and why this is happening, and an understanding of the politics as well as the systems of inequality and how that is showing up in this time. And I heard Arundhati Roy say, maybe even like a year ago, that COVID, it's like an MRI scan for like every country, where it illuminates where the problems really are. And we can see in countries all over the world that COVID, it just makes the inequality bigger. Wherever there are issues, they just get more and more pronounced because of this pandemic and everything that it brings up. So would you please share with us what is really happening in India and why we need to understand the politics as well as this sort of romantic notion of the culture and the spirituality?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think we have to take it back to the riots in Gujarat before Modi became prime minister. I will be very blunt and say this is what happens when you vote for a killer. What a killer does is that he will continue to kill. And in many ways, there was a Muslim genocide in the state of Gujarat with Modi and Amit Shah. And there's a huge divide, which I'm sure many of the listeners know, between Hindus and Muslims in India. In 47, there was also the, creation of Pakistan, and then, years later, Bangladesh. There has been conflict with religion, and within Hinduism, a lot of it's been around caste, of course. India is a complex place where a lot of these differences, these polar opposites, from having like something that feels incredibly simple to something incredibly complex, all of these variations seem to coexist in this wonderful chaos. And it's really within this chaos that I think we find this connection to India and what it means to be Indian. The reason we are in this place right now, well, a lot of countries have been dealing with COVID over the past year, and you've seen how governments have come together to manage and control and try and control, places where there is like less value of human life, where people are so focused on power, are the places that have suffered the most. And we've seen that in the US under the Trump administration. We're seeing that in Brazil under Bolsonaro as well. And we are really witnessing it in this version under Modi. But the thing to really understand, why in this situation now, in 2021, here are the facts. There is a very big election that was taking place in the local states. The state of West Bengal was a big priority for the current BJP, for Hindu government, because if they were able to sway Bengal to the BJP, then they would have more seats in what would be considered India's Senate. And if they won Bengal and they had the majority of seats, then they could change the constitution. And one can imagine that this current government, if you change the constitution where secularism is something that is so prominent, they would probably change it into a Hindu-focused agenda. It would become Hindustan. And what happens to the 200 million Muslims and the hundreds of millions of other religions that are in India? How do we protect them? How do we protect the most vulnerable? How do we protect the lowest caste? When we even say in the Constitution, or we have laws that caste is illegal, but we have seen even now the people who are most affected by some of these choices by the government have been the underprivileged. And you've seen it like a year ago when Modi suddenly did a lockdown without any warning. You had millions of migrant workers and Dalits who suddenly had to navigate their way home. To say you even have a home, the idea of home is a luxury. To have a roof over your head is not even a reality for a lot of Indians. Now, with the way that COVID has been handled, where because the government wanted to win Bengal, because they wanted to play into the Hindu vote, they encouraged a lot of rallies. And the other aspect of creating space and distance is also a luxury. I'm in Norway right now, where you can have the space in a country of 5 million people. I mean, that's like probably the population of my neighborhood in South Delhi. And space is also a luxury. Home is a luxury. The current government, wanted to have rallies because they wanted to win the state of Bengal. And then in addition to that, the Kumbh Mela, which is a gathering of a lot of Hindu pilgrims, millions of them, which takes place every 12 years. The government decided for astrological reasons to move it up from next year when it was supposed to be. And they said, we're going to have it in 2021. So 11 years later, not even actually following the rules. But the reason I don't believe is astrological, I believe it was to really sway and focus on the Hindu vote. And suddenly you have 99% of those millions of people showing up and then leaving. And those people are now positive with COVID. And they will go back to wherever they've come from and continue spreading it. So I don't even think we've understood or seen the worst of this. And, for me personally, we have been seeing people die every day. We know people who've been dying every day. And this really ultimately comes down to the leadership of the country with a Hindu agenda has put us in this place. And I will say, look, I think it's really important to, I have a lot of respect for friends who are religious, who come from different faiths. My mother is very religious. My mother's Christian. My father's Hindu. I grew up in a Muslim country. And so I do really appreciate, I'm not holding it against Hindus. My father's Hindu. I'm half Hindu. But I think fundamentalism can be so blinding. And that is why millions of Indians are going to die.
I was taking a few breaths because it's just, it's just heartbreaking that this is happening and we can see it happening.
And it makes one realize and think, I'm an Indian citizen. I grew up in the Middle East, but I've lived in the US for many years, and I've been very vocal and active, in terms of US politics. And this has even been a wake-up call for me, saying, I'm still an Indian citizen. I hold an Indian passport. What am I doing to really, really affect social justice movements in India? I need to do more. Many of us, many people like me need to do more.
Yeah, I've been feeling the same and then trying to understand the most meaningful and effective ways in which to show up.
Yeah. But at the same time, like I was saying, Amisha, I think the silver lining that one is seeing in the midst of this is people coming together to protect each other. People coming together and innovating to find solutions when we're witnessing and we're recognizing the gaps. This incredible foundation called Taisya Foundation that a friend of mine, Mohit Raj, runs is really on the ground in Delhi doing everything from delivering oxygen cylinders to plasma. They have a helpline that is getting 1,500 calls a day. Doctors in Diaspora also comes from a need that they articulated. Another thing that they have just done is that they started to realize, well, what they saw is that obviously rickshaw drivers have been greatly affected by COVID. People aren't getting in rickshaws looking for rides. Those people are losing their livelihoods. And then at the same time, there's a massive shortage of ambulances, or the ambulances are incredibly expensive. And it is sometimes these rides from one's house to the hospital where you need that oxygen. It is on those rides that people may even be dying. So they have now created a solution called auto ambulances, where auto rickshaws are being outfitted in a way to have some of the most basic ambulatory care so that we're even protecting people as they're trying to even get to the hospital. These are ideas that are coming up now that will be put in place and become systems. And so I think this has been a wake-up call to everybody. And, you have teams coming together, whether it's Mission Oxygen that was created by various young folks and entrepreneurs who are Indian or in the diaspora. And it's just been incredible to see the community of people. And I mean, I've been getting messages from strangers just on Instagram saying that they're seeing the work that the diaspora internationally is doing, and that work is felt, and that we need to keep going. Because sometimes, obviously, in this time, it feels incredibly thankless. The scale is so large. How are we actually helping? But we are.
What's your kind of take and advice for people that want to get more involved? And maybe there's a diaspora in particular, like that maybe there's different ways that we can get involved. And then, everyone else, and I guess especially a lot of the conversation, especially on Instagram, has been around those that profit from practices and rituals and agricultural products that come from India. This complex map of our interconnectedness. And, you are like Indian, your parents are in Delhi right now, you're in Norway right now, a lot of your work is in America. We live these lives where we are touched by different places and different cultures, and we have access to so much. How do we make sense of how that works when it comes to solidarity and showing up? And for me, when I've been reflecting on this, a lot of it comes down to us kind of healing this extractive relationship that we have with everything that Western modern culture has really made very normal. Like, it's just normal. Just take what you want from wherever, and without respect. And I believe that, we are all free to be inspired and learn things from different parts of the world. Like, that's one of the beautiful things about being alive in this time, that the world has been made so open in lots of ways. But then with that, there's this kind of understanding that we're connected in the suffering and the challenges, as well as just what we can kind of take that enhances our own lives.
Yeah. Look, I think it's a beautiful thing that incredible parts of India have and practices have become so global. I mean, I just had a yoga class this morning with my Norwegian teacher who practices Jiva Mukti, which she learned at a school that was, in New York, started by two white Americans, right? So it is this wonderful thing that it has traveled. I think sometimes there's little understanding about where things actually come from. Sometimes, I mean, to be honest, that's also the case with our food. I'm directing something for the New York Times right now, and it's that I filmed in Norway that tracks like the ingredients and where they've come from. And the ingredient that I'm doing is chili. And, I don't think most Indians would know that chili comes from Mexico and Central America. And the first time, and even growing up like millions of years ago, India is currently the largest exporter and producer of chili globally. But that's not where it comes from.
And you can't imagine Indian food without chili.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm making a lot of Indian food without chili at the moment for my nieces. And it really, yeah, we've been also making a lot of coriander green chili chutney to go on the side for the grown-ups.
Yeah, it's also like we live in this interconnected world, as you said, and everything has probably come from somewhere else somehow in our movements. And we are currently building and iterating on cultures as we speak and making it our own. I think that an acknowledgement and an awareness, in this case, of what's happening in India, and a support for Indian people is necessary for companies that are making millions and in some cases billions of dollars off things like yoga, chai, tea, which, for Indians is tea, because we just call our tea chai. Of course, wellness companies that talk about incense sticks and sandalwood and turmeric and these are companies that have been incredibly silent about India when India they need to do a little more giving back because they've profited from very Indian practices and ingredients.
And a lot of the yoga teachers, like, I feel like a lot are really showing up. They don't have a lot of money, sort of lucrative career,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of companies that do huge business. I mean, the wellness industry, which is mostly derived from practices from India, is just huge. It's a multi-million-dollar industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what is amazing is that my friend Mira Jacob, who's a writer, really started to focus on this aspect and called out companies like Alo Yoga and Lululemon. And she was pretty persistent about it. She and I are actually working on an initiative that it's a little too premature to talk about right now, but it's building off this idea of giving back for these companies. And she got a response from Lululemon on Instagram saying, we are giving $200,000 towards India COVID relief. That's progress. That is change. That is showing an understanding and an awareness. We can acknowledge that this is progress.
And my next question is, and what percentage of your global profits is that? Because, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, these are, again, very early stages for us, but the way that we're looking at it is there's 1.3 billion Indians in India. That's 18% of the world's population right now. Where we will be asking for is for companies that have profited off Indian ingredients and practices and mostly like wellness sports companies to give back 1.3% of the profits made on really specific items or products. So we're still in the works right now, but it is also our way of reclaiming what is inherently Indian.
So much of your work, from how I understand it, and I would love for you to share more of your own creative journey, but a big aspect of it is storytelling and how stories affect culture. Can you share a little bit more around some of the things that you've worked on and why and your journey, especially as a woman and as a woman of color, why it's been important for you to bring different voices and perspectives into our culture?
Absolutely. When I was 21 and I was in college in the States, I had a visiting professor from the University of Bombay was teaching a class called Women in Indian Cinema. And the first movie she made us watch was Satyajit Ray's Pathar Panchali. And when I saw that movie, this incredible dramatic feature film, in black and white with the soundtrack of Ravi Shankar, addressing caste and socioeconomic issues and telling the story of this very poor Bengali family. It was so profound and so powerful. I don't think I could then watch movies in the same way again. Because for me at that point, I recognized the urgency and the power that the medium had to change perspective and to really shed a light in a beautifully lyrical and emotional way about the lives of other people or our own lives, if we're brave enough to confront them. That for me was when I started to try and navigate my life or work as a filmmaker. It was not like I was a kid and I said, I'm always going to be a filmmaker. I grew up in Oman and I didn't have a lot of friends who were, really saying they were going to work in the arts. We were all going to go become bankers. That's kind of what was expected and understood. And, we were good at school and that's what we would end up doing. And so it was a big shift for me, with my production company that I started 3 years ago, where we make film and TV and content. It's this mindfulness that we try and keep in mind, even if we're making a comedy or a horror film, it's like, how are we not perpetuating stereotypes? How are we supporting authentic voices, respectful filmmakers, good people? How can we lead with kindness and empathy, which is quite different, I would say, for like, the entertainment industry in many ways. But I feel like that is the foundation for our work. It's funny because I had a job opportunity a couple of months ago to partner with two very established, and in one of them was an Oscar-winning producer, and they wanted me to be their third partner and to, run their company in LA and, to be a founder with them. And because they were really focused on changing the industry. And while I really acknowledge, what they're trying to do, and I think it's wonderful, I feel like at my much smaller company that is being built from the ground up, that doesn't have like splashy announcements in the trades when I started it, is actually where I belong and where the greatest change and impact is going to happen. And so on my first phone call with, one of the partners who I think was quite stunned that I essentially listened and said no right away, I said, I could recommend other people who I think would be incredible partners, because we are a part of this community. And it's not like me saying, no, it's not for me. It's just like that I don't want to work with them. It's just not where I think my greatest contributions will be as a filmmaker, because it is growing this company and growing the team and learning from my own team that will hopefully make powerful, entertaining things that are worth people's time.
I love that conviction that you have and that knowing. I find a lot of people ask about that. Like, how do you know? Because so many people get swayed by opportunities, and maybe there's more money or there's more prestige or there's more something. And I also know a lot of the friends that listen to this show, they're on a quest to find their purpose, to find like their way of contributing. For you, like, how has that clarity developed of like, actually, this is my part. This is where I can really make my contribution?
I feel like my conviction grows, but right behind the conviction is a lot of self-doubt and analysis and wondering. So I think it's a very natural thing, especially because I am also, creative person, to like grapple with self-doubt and is this all worth it in the end? But, the question is like, what is ever the end? And so you just have to keep going. I value actually the doubt, because I think it's also a nice way to kind of gauge and to question and to see. I think it's sometimes in that discomfort. I feel like I'm always uncomfortable. I never get complacent or too comfortable, which I think is where creative ideas go to die if it's too easy. In my mind, while there is like this idea of like this great impact I want to have, and every day is super different and we just kind of take it as it comes. I feel like, it's like surfing. It's like you can sit on the board and you can get on a wave. You can't control that wave, and maybe you'll be able to ride it, or you'll get knocked off and you'll be at the bottom of the ocean and you don't know if you have the strength to like swim to the surface, but you have to.
Yeah. You make it and you find new depths in yourself.
Yep. Yeah. The idea of success is like a moving target. I don't think that there's any real definition of what that is, or at least I don't believe so.
Hello. We're taking a short pause from the conversation. On behalf of our team and our community, thank you for being here and co-creating The Future is Beautiful. Much dedication, love, and time goes into the production of this show. We believe in being advertising free in a world that's always trying to sell us stuff we don't need. And so we make this show with you and for you, thanks to your support. There are 3 ways you can be more involved. so we can share the vision, wisdom, and creativity here as we explore what it means to be a human in this time. You can support the podcast by sharing it with your friends, posting episodes on social media, and doing iTunes reviews. You can support as a patron by making a monthly or one-off donation of your choice. And with this, you join the Global Patrons group and monthly video calls where we share connection and insight. You get to know the other amazing patrons from around the world, their stories and their work, and you offer direct support to me and the team, as well as being brought into the behind the scenes of creating something like this. It sounds like a lot, but it's as much or as little as you want to get involved in. You can become a member of Presence, our membership collective of care and practice, where we explore how to embody the themes of the podcast with workshops, calls, special events, tree whispers, and powerful tools, practices, and rituals that you can bring into your life. This is open to absolutely everybody as we create an inclusive and diverse space that celebrates well-being as a human right, where we explore together what it means to be creative, courageous, and connected to ourselves, each other, and the earth. This is about embodying sacred activism. We love meeting patrons and Presence members, and how being part in this way weaves our lives together, as well as making this show possible. If anything from this conversation has moved or inspired you, please get more involved. All information can be found at www.thefutureisbeautiful.co/community. This show really can't go on without your patronage and Presence membership, so please do make it happen. And now, back to the conversation. What maybe like a project or an aspect of like the culture in which Honto 88 works? Like, can you share something of like what you're proud of being able to co-create there?
Oh my goodness. I mean, we have such a wonderful slate of projects. I mean, there are things that I'm writing to direct, and there are things that we're producing or executive producing. There's a project that we're working on called Historically Black, which is with a rapper, educator, viral historian called Erica Buddington, who essentially is really focused on highlighting untold Black histories in a way that feels like incredibly urgent and profound and fresh. In the way that I discovered this was a colleague of mine through common friends. She connected with Erica. She had seen Erica kind of doing a version of the show on her Instagram. And then we have started to collaborate with Erica, and we're in the process of like putting the creative team together, taking it to market. I'm incredibly inspired by people like her who are constantly learning and constantly digging. What we will probably do with that show is once you watch an episode or a segment, you will never look at the world in the same way again. This kind of quest for truth is like inherent in our work, even if it's a comedy. And even like, I just finished writing a film, which is a new drama. I kind of had the idea just percolating about a month ago, and I said, I'm going to finish writing the screenplay this month. And I did. And, it takes a while to do, but I was actually really proud of myself for saying, okay, I'm committed to my characters. I'm going to tell the story. And that story follows a Indian American woman in her mid-30s it opens with her getting released from prison, trying to rebuild her life and connect with her family and her community. And this is not necessarily a story that, as the South Asians really address, is like, we're meant to be a model minority. These things don't happen to us. Of course, in the US prison system, there's such a highlight on, and I'm glad that criminal justice reform, prison reform really centers and highlights Black voices, because they have been completely targeted by the system. And in some cases, there are South Asian stories too that need to get told. And so that's something that I've just finished writing, and we're going to start putting it together. And I can't wait to make that film.
Congratulations. I can't wait to watch that film.
And the title is called Your Woman, inspired by the White Town song, Your Woman. And there's a scene where she sings the song at a karaoke bar.
Can you share with us about Resistance Revival Chorus? I absolutely love this.
It's funny because actually in the movie I just wrote, the main character ends up being a part of a chorus. And it's a chorus, in that case, made of different women and non-binary folk who have been in prison, and they come together in song. And they really use song as their means of connecting with each other and not judging each other. In a way, the inspiration for that chorus is, of course, for me, the Resistance Revival Chorus. The Resistance Revival Chorus is a group of women and non-binary folk who came together right after Trump won the previous election, because it was a way of understanding what was happening in the world and kind of turning that agitation into action through song. Because a lot of incredible resistance movements in history have had songs and soundtracks. And, Harry Belafonte, who some of my co-founders worked closely with on the Women's March, Harry Belafonte said, when the movement is strong, the music is strong. And so we needed to come together in music. And I feel so grateful and blessed to have been a part of the founding team, but also more than anything, to be a member and to be in it and to really learn from these incredible artists and activists who are using their voice. And that's one of the things I will say I really miss, being in Norway. Yes, there's a lot of progression here, but at the same time, I think that there's a certain idea of not speaking up. And so you can never get too comfortable. You have to strive for change, no matter what society. And what I appreciate about the US are these calls to actions and the calls for justice that are led by people. We are typically at so many protests and gatherings, and I find so much strength in those interactions and in those events. And who knew that this idea that started in a kitchen amongst friends would become what it is today? And, we finished our album. We're performing at Bonnaroo and Outside Lands this year. We have had members perform at the Grammys, at the Tonight Show. We performed with Patti Smith, and Carly Simon at Carnegie Hall. We've done at Lincoln Center. And that's just the New York chapter of the chorus. What's amazing with working with organizers and learning from them has been understanding how you can't just make something that exists only in one city. The Women's March, really, there were movements all around the world. That's what made it also really powerful. And so in the same way with the chorus is that we created a white label so that people around the world could start their own.
Amazing. I wasn't aware of that aspect of it. Are there many that have begun and taken that invitation?
Yeah. I mean, the chorus has been around for almost 4 years now. I would say that there are choruses all over, from Australia to France, to different parts of the US, of course. And it's been really incredible to hear about and to see and to support. We're in awe of them, what they need to say in their places.
And the album is called This Joy. Can you share why joy in these times where we're all being called to be activists?
Well, there's this beautiful quote by Toy Delacourt, which really was an influence for us, which is, joy is an act of resistance. We really subscribe and believe in that idea and that philosophy. And so when we come together in song, of course, we can get so angry at the same time. We channel our anger into action, of course. But when we're also singing, we have to bring joy and happiness in these trying times, because we are also confronted with so much upsetting news constantly. And so we need joy to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this movement of pleasure activism and being allowed to connect to our joy and show up from that place, because there's been so much in recent years around the sort of the suffering, if you care, you must suffer. It's that reminder that we're all suffering enough already. That's the point. And so how can we come together in ways that make our resilience stronger? And joy and song are exactly what does this. as humans, we're just wired to sing together. It's always been part of culture.
Yep, absolutely. And it's not about having a good voice. It's just about showing up with heart. That's all you need to do.
Is there one more creative project or I guess story from like your own life as of living as a creative that you'd like to share with us? Maybe something around how you keep inspired.
I mean, I really thrive off the energy of other people. And I love connecting with new people and reconnecting, of course, with old friends. I miss traveling right now. I was going all over the place. I was on flights like twice a week, probably in a new place, and talking to strangers about their lives. And I realized that, especially in these COVID times when things got locked down, I hadn't even asked those same questions of the people I knew really well. That was something really interesting for me, was to even ask these same questions of my own family and to get to know them better. The same way that I met strangers and I asked questions about what drives them and what gets them up in the morning. I mean, those are questions we take for granted and we don't ask each other. Discovering new things about the people I've known the longest has also been a wonderful way of, really acknowledging them and building on family and friends. And, even with my own team, learning from them keeps me inspired. I would say, I hope to always be in this constant state of wanting to learn more. You never know too much. That definitely keeps me going. And I would say that, you're always going to be confronted with so many challenges. I mean, I started before Honto 88, started a previous company with a couple of partners, and that completely went south and soured. And I discovered the issues eventually, and there was a complete breakdown of trust at that point. I recognized that in order to protect my little creative heart, I needed to leave right away, and that I couldn't invest time into a place that wasn't also gonna let me thrive. Unfortunately, there was a lot of insecurity and jealousy that came into play, and I needed to get out of that. I had to start from scratch. And I remember it was like one of the darkest times for me professionally, where I didn't know if I had strength to keep working. I remember ordering LSAT books and said, I'm going to go to law school. I don't know. I think, I have to really thank my now husband for being just there for me, because you need to surround yourself. You are going to lose your energy at times, and you won't be strong, and you don't know why you're doing anything and why any of it matters. And I think, you do need the kind of comfort and reassurance from people to, in those moments, remind you that you can find strength yourself and you can do it. I think a creative life is going to be filled with those types of challenges, working with the wrong partners. You're going to be at fault. Other people will be at fault. You're just kind of navigating these intense, creative, complex ideas and companies together, and recognizing that you don't have to get stuck in it is really important. And protecting yourself in the process is necessary. It's never easy, ever. Even as I'm talking about, yes, we have a couple of shows set up at Warner Brothers. We have a show at MGM. I sold a movie to Sony. I can name drop these studios and I can say all these things that sound really impressive. But every day in this space is going to come with someone being upset about something, or something didn't work out, and disappointment. And the good news is only maybe 1% of all the work and all the rejection and the heartbreak that one has to deal with.
Yeah, and so many scripts and treatments pouring so much energy into them, and then they're brilliant, and then nothing's happened 5 years later.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and just learning to keep creating and to keep open.
Yeah. You have to protect your heart. And I will say that in this time with what was happening with COVID in India, I was really tired. And I was trying to figure out how to do all the work I could do in India while suddenly running a company and managing our projects. But that's really where my team stepped in and said, do what you need, take care of yourself. We have this, especially for a new company. You kind of have to be involved in everything. But it was really this time where my team, my colleagues just said, take care of yourself, do what you need to do, get some sleep, focus on what's happening in India that really matters to you. And we got this.
Yeah. And part of that is the beauty of having created your own team where you all are there for the same reasons and can show up for each other and can see the work that you're doing in the world and life, that they can support each other, that they don't become these separate things. There's one question, just as you were sharing about, being inspired by other people, and so many creative ideas come from late night chats and dinners, and many a company project has been born from particularly late night New York dinners.
Mm-hmm.
How have you been making space for those conversations that don't necessarily have that productivity value? Because that's something I've been finding in the worlds of Zoom that we've all been thrust into, that so many of our conversations are somewhat transactional. Like it's like, oh, this is a meeting about this, or like this is about this. And that space of just kind of bouncing ideas and chatting, can get a bit lost.
I found myself in these COVID times in in a country that I didn't really know enough about. And I suddenly had to make new friends. And I did at least have the luck, I was suddenly thrust into a lot of newness. It's been wonderful, yes, to meet and connect and build community here. But I will say my late nights are always filled with, just every day I'll at least get to call one friend in New York just over a glass of wine. It doesn't even have to be on Zoom. And it's not about work. It's just about, how's your family? How are you doing? It's about the random gossip that we need to laugh about. Maintaining that has been really important. I mean, I then end up, coming back to bed and my husband and dog are snoring like a duet. And that's what I come back to. But it's just really important to check in with other people and to work against the kind of transactional meetings of the day.
So my last question is for you to share a call to action. And of course, you've shared many in this conversation already, and we will put the links to everything you've shared on our website along with this conversation. Part of the sharing of a call to action is that it makes it a little bit easier for people to just directly take what they've heard today and show up. And so I imagine we're going back to India for this. What is the one thing that you would say to everyone listening to this conversation, go and do right now?
I would say learn about what's happening in India and understand what put the country in the position it's in first before racing to donate.
And that includes colonial legacy as well.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. I think that that's really important to understand India, why it's so complex. What is its past? Why is it in the place it's today before racing to donate? Because we can all donate, but to understand more about India, I think, is really important. Why is the world's largest democracy failing right now? What does this mean for the world? Is it still a democracy? Isn't that what we aspire to in a lot of the countries that people, who are probably listening to this are from? What happens when democracy fails? Because that's what we're witnessing. So the first thing that people can do is, I think, really understand, when we're talking about a future, also, we need to create systems that protect and save people. And so what can we learn from India? How can we apply it to, our own countries of where we're from? And you don't have to be a person in politics to care about this, but it's just really important to know that you are a citizen of somewhere and you have a voice and your ideas matter, because if you keep electing the wrong people, more people around you will die. First things, learn about India, understand how this affects your own life, your own government, your own country, your own community, your family. And then I would say really think about supporting community-led efforts on the ground. There are a lot of things that seem to be held up at the airports right now with oxygen cylinders and so on. And so on my bio, there's a Google Doc that a doctor called Lavanya, has been updating constantly with community-led efforts that are vetted. And so you can find things that are really specific to your cause, whether it's to support trans lives or, seeing that now there are going to be a lot of orphan children. So how can we support more orphanages to deal with that influx? So, every day that list is updated with what the needs are. And there are a lot of really incredible journalism sites that are also listed at the bottom. So I would say check those out too, and really support Indian journalists who are telling the truth when the government is trying to quiet them.
Yeah, one is The Wire, and there are some others there.
Yeah, Caravan, The Wire, Scroll. I read India Cable every day, the India Cable, which is a newsletter started by founding journalists at The Wire. And I think it's really important to support investigative journalism right now in anyone's country, wherever anyone's from.
Thank you, Shruti. I love how you're not giving like the donate to this foundation answer.
Because there's a lot of money. The interesting thing is that already at this point, we are seeing money, but know where your money goes and know why we are in this situation that is asking for help.
Yeah. And with that, looking for our role as a global citizen, and where there are petitions that can be signed on a global level to put pressure on the Indian government, and also to put pressure on, a lot of the aid's not getting through, like asking why, and all of these questions.
Absolutely. We can't just donate blindly. It's like saying you're watching someone bleed and you're like, here's a band, you're seeing a gaping wound and you say, here's a Band-Aid. That's enough. Just really understand why India is bleeding right now.
Thank you. How would you like our friends listening to connect with you more deeply if they wish to?
Well, I would love to hear from people listening, see how you are, tell me who you are. If you have any questions about how you can help efforts on the ground in India, I'm very happy to be a resource for that. And the best way for now is through my Instagram at Shruti Riya, SHRUTIRYA. And as much as I can, I'm also highlighting and supporting efforts and opinions in India. So I think people can go to it as a resource right now.
Amazing. Thank you. Always a pleasure to connect with you, Shruti. And thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience with us.
Thank you, Amisha. It's so wonderful to connect with you, as always.
And before we close this week's episode, I have an extra note here from Shruti. As you know, this situation in India is very current, live, and present. And we recorded the podcast a week ago. And so here is a little additional call to action from Shruti, specific to the work that she is now doing in West Bengal.
One of the things that's been really important to me and, to many others has been standing up for people who've been marginalized in this process, whether it's been migrant workers or the Dalit community, as we saw from the COVID shutdown last year, to, of course, the plight of the farmers and predominantly the Sikh community, which is like an ongoing stain in India's history. And the farmers' protests were widely covered. But, now, of course, we've moved into COVID relief work and panic. At this time right now, there's such a focus on the urban areas like Delhi and Bombay and Bangalore, and that's where we're getting a lot of numbers and data. But we're also now forgetting about what's happening in rural areas where a lot of people don't necessarily want to take vaccines because of misinformation. And so we're actually seeing a huge surge in villages, and those places also need our support. So currently, I'm working on a fundraising effort in West Bengal in the Nadia district, which is run by Mahua Moitra, who is a member of parliament, who is one of the few politicians in India who I really look up to and have essentially been in awe of ever since she joined office a few years ago. She's one of the most honest, authentic, real people that is invested in protecting community. And so when her office reached out and asked for our support with connecting with an international audience, we simply had no choice. This is someone who I know does the work all day, every day. And so we're just happy to, launch this fundraiser to support COVID relief efforts.
Thank you for spending your precious time with us. As always, you can find links to everything we mentioned in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on the blog. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible with you, our community. If you loved this and would like to fund our show with a monthly donation or join our online group to connect with other listeners, please visit www.thefutureisbeautiful.co and click on Community and Support. Please also share with friends, hit subscribe, and leave us a review so we can grow. Those gold stars really help others find us, so these ideas can spread. Here is to us, creating a beautiful future together. The Future is Beautiful is made by an all-female team working voluntarily or on reduced rates until our listener support grows. If you have been moved by anything you heard here, please donate the equivalent of buying us a drink. All donations make a huge difference to us and will allow us to keep doing this and remain advertising free. Until next time, I leave you with this question. How will you create beauty in the world?